welcome back. Do you remember that feeling when Jeremy Corbyn won the leadership elections in the Labour Party? Do you remember that sense of hope? Not that we would have socialism anytime soon. You can't have that in one country. We all know that. But the idea that we could remake the Labour Party into a vehicle of and for the working class. Alas, it was not to be. And we want to discuss today what lessons we should have, could have, and hopefully have learned. And we've got two guests with us, maybe three, if one, Salma Yakuba, hasn't shown up yet, but we'll hope she's coming along. First, I'm going to start to talk to Ken Loach, film director, and of course, supporter of the left. Thank you for joining us, Ken. Hello. Ken, you've signed the signatories, you're one of the signatories of the Platform for a Democratic Party, sort of indicating that you think there is room for improvement in terms of your party. Do you think we have learned lessons from the defeat of the Corbyn movement?
Well, I think that's a process. I think there are a number of important lessons we have to learn. The most pressing is that the manipulation within the Labour Party that so many of us expelled, well, I was quite happy with that. It was like any abusive relationship. But the top-down control and the dirty tricks played by those in charge was it's symptomatic of a certain type of Westminster politics. And Starmer's still up to his tricks. So what we have to, the first thing we have to learn is this must be democratic. Grassroots democracy from the word go, and that means from now. And I think there are improvements that can be made on what has happened so far. I think the preparations are flawed. And I think that has to begin again. It has to be grassroots democracy from the start, because once we are in the habit of one group telling everyone else what is going to happen, without the authority of the whole group, the whole potential membership, then we're on a slippery road, and we shall not claim it back. So I think first lesson we haven't learned totally is that grassroots democracy begins at the beginning, and it has to start now.
Some people think there might be a danger that if we accept sortition and no delegates being elected by the branches, if it could become enshrined. So we have to keep saying it might happen for this conference, but not the other conferences. Ken, what about the attacks by the right that you started to refer to? They were not just the Labour right, of course. They were also the right in the establishment. And how was our reaction then, and what should we do better this time? Because they will come again, no doubt.
Of course. Well, I think the first thing is that. The attacks, if it is a genuinely socialist, internationalist party, it will means cutting back the power of capital, and that means that there will be hostility from the state, from the whole state, in its many varied forms, and they will find a vehicle to attack us with. The last time it was the smear of anti-Semitism against Jeremy, which was fraudulent or grossly exaggerated. And that was clearly had to be confronted head on, and accusations made against the real racists. And that would be a lot easier today because we can see the racism against the Palestinians. So I think that the lesson from that is when we're attacked, go on the front foot and denounce those making the attacks. Don't sit back and make compromises in the hope that they will stop, because they won't. But I think we have to prepare much more seriously for a compromise, from an attack from the whole state, from the however we interpret that, from the soft attacks from the BBC and the media to the hard-nosed attacks from those with capital to destabilize the economy, and all the way to the serious forces, the intelligence services, and so on. So it is a huge undertaking to stand for the ideas, serious ideas, of reshaping the economy in the interest of the people within this so-called liberal democracy, which is democratic, provided the boss wins. Now, that level of attack we have to consider very seriously.
You used to be a supporter as well of Labour against the witch hunt, and you spoke out against sacrificing, Corbyn's supporter in the hope that this would silence the right, because they just smelled blood and they continued their fight even stronger. What do you make of what we think looks like a proposed ban on left groups joining your party?
Well, I think that's complicated. I think we know the horrors of the block vote, and personally, I'm not in favour of a block vote. I think the idea of tendencies is different, and the idea of a set of ideas that are within the context of a socialist movement and a socialist party are perfectly proper, and that's what the left has always done. Is groups will say, "Look, we think this is the right way," and other groups will say, "No, we think that's the right way." That's fine, but I think to incorporate organisations that discipline their members or expect their members to behave in a certain way within the party as a whole, I think that provides a problem. But I think it's not a difficulty of absorbing ideas. So I think there will be we can find a way through that. Back in the 60s, I was a member of, I wasn't a member, I was very close to a Trotskyist group. And that had, yes, it had big disadvantages, but it had massive good things within the problems everybody would know. But so I think they provide the real richness to our discussion. So it's a question of how we balance it. Tendencies, yes, I'm in favour of those. But an organised bloc to vote in a certain way, I think, is difficult.
Although some people think that if groups, like the SWP, Socialist Party, get involved, it might change them as well, because they do get in touch with other ideas and, democratic structures that might help them as well to democratise a little bit. Max, over to you now. Max Shanley, you used to be a prominent member of the Oxford University Labour Club, and you were a Young Labour on the Young Labour's National Committee during the Corbyn years. You were also quite close to John Landsman for a little while. I'm sorry to bring that up, but it is important to see what you were quite close to some of those decisions that were made at that time. Have you learned lesson, or have you seen things going wrong in a way and say we have to do this quite differently this time?
Oh, definitely. I mean, ultimately Marx was right. History does indeed repeat itself. You could say that the defeat of Bennism was a tragedy and the success of Corbynism a farce. And now we're in sort of uncharted waters, in a boat without a paddle, kind of unclear what direction we're going in. And, I think that a lot of the people at the top can't imagine a world outside of the Labour Party, and so they would simply like to recreate it, albeit a little bit more left-wing in its policy offering, but no more democratic or less bureaucratic than the Labour Party we're all used to. I think quite a lot of them are more concerned with how they're going to control your party than what it actually stands for. There was an interesting document that got leaked a couple of weeks ago. Well, not a couple of weeks ago, probably about a month ago now. And written by somebody at the top of your party, where they were dishing out jobs to people. And under political strategy, it said, to be confirmed. All the other roles were fulfilled. But under political strategy, what does your party stand for? It said, to be confirmed. And I think that's probably a good example of precisely why they're not the type of people that we can look to for leadership in this coming period.
What should be the political strategy then for your party to actually become a mass working class party that can change things?
Yeah, so I think we need to accept that the working class ain't what it used to be. You know, as an organised force in and for itself, it doesn't really exist anymore. It was destroyed by 45 years of Thatcherism. So one of the primary tasks of the party is going to have to be to initiate a process of class formation and to dig trenches in society. And that means, you know, creating a whole world of labour, a state within the state, with our own, reading groups, film clubs, food banks, credit unions, anything you can think of, everything, but controlled by the workers. And so that we can build an organised majority in society. You know, I think it's very important that the party stands in elections, but it would be a tragedy if it defined itself by them. And a lot of people, because they come from a Labour background, as such as I do, I grew up in the Labour Party. I joined the Labour Party when I was 21. They can't imagine a world beyond simple electioneering. But the problem is that, they believe that winning elections is paramount and forming a government is paramount. But the truth of the matter is that we're not going to win the next election. We probably won't win the next election after that. And even if we won the next election after that, without having a provable majority in society, not just at the ballot box, taking power is a near impossibility. We could take office, but, governmental office is one thing, state power is another thing. And so, we not only have to engage in a process of class formation, but we need to engage in a long struggle of membership development as well, through comprehensive political education in the first instance of the members and then the working class as a whole. And I'm not talking here about telling people what to think, but equipping them with the tools so that they know how to think, how to critically engage with the world, because they'll only be capable of turning the world upside down if they feel empowered to do so and actually capable of taking over the running of society at a drop of a hat.
That question of participation in government or not is an interesting one, because everybody at the top, as far as I can see, thinks, and probably most members thinks, of course, you join a party like your party to get into government and to change things that way. But it does come with a lot of risks. I mean, just look at Podemos, Syriza, etc. What happens when you're trying to manage capitalism, and a capitalism that is so in decline and has, there's no money, etc. They don't want to spend any money, and you can't do it in one country in any case. So what are you arguing for? A party of opposition? That could be one way to effect change.
Yeah, no, a party of permanent opposition to the British state, the entire constitutional set up and the present social relations, basically. Look, I think running in elections is important. I would like to see a left government within my lifetime. Luckily, I'm, relatively young enough that that is a actual possibility. I'm 35 now, so potentially by the time I'm Ken's age, the left might be in power. Who knows? But I think if we get ahead of ourselves and we must win the next election, we're just setting ourselves up to fail. Without digging trenches in society, building an organised majority, we'll never be able to take on not only the capitalist state, but the capitalist class as a whole. Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said that organised money was just as dangerous as an organised mob. So perhaps what we need to do in building that organised majority is creating a organised mob of millions.
Sounds good to me. One question I have for you then, in your time when you were around momentum, because this discussion now is a big one that the OMOV, one member, one vote, that's the way to make conference democratic, and it's very popular. It's very popular amongst many left-wingers that you can have an online vote at the end of your party's launch conference. You can say yes or no to various documents. In momentum, an OMOV online poll was used to abolish all structures. Is OMOV for you? It works locally, doesn't it? Is it a useful tool for a national conference to make decisions that way, in your view?
I think it comes down to how you define OMOV. So I support OMOV. I suspect Ken supports OMOV, and actually, Tina, I suspect you support OMOV. But it's how you define OMOV that matters. For an awful lot of people, OMOV is synonymous with plebiscitary democracy, such as what we had in Momentum, and with the leadership elections of Jeremy Corbyn and the election of Labour's National Executive Committee and everything like that. That's plebiscitary democracy. But that isn't the totality of what OMOV is. I would define one member, one vote as an equal right to participate in democratic deliberations and decision making. And if that's the case, OMOV is many things. OMOV is all member meetings. OMOV is actually delegate conferences. Delegates elected by all members is actually a form of one member, one vote. But people's sights on what one member, one vote actually stands for have been quite narrowed by the experiences of 2015 to 2019.
Absolutely. Ken, if I could bring you back in now. As I mentioned at the beginning, you have signed the platform for a democratic party. So yeah. Do you think there is space to fight, to turn this ship around? And in which way do you think it needs to be turned around? What can we do at launch conference? Can we do anything at launch conference, in the regional committees meetings?
Well, I think we need to start again, really. I think it's the number of decisions seem to be quite arbitrary. There seems to be no way of influencing what's going on the way it is set up at present. But the number point out, to answer that question specifically, I think it needs an independent group with not favouring one side or the other, since many people joined because Zara Sultana said I'm in and joined Jeremy, and that sparked a huge enthusiasm, and out of that came the surge in people wanting to join. So I think what seems to have happened has been deplorable, really, and it's I think we've got to start again with a group who are not partisan and who can work out a process by which the party is established. And it's complicated because I think on the one hand, we have to, this is commenting a little bit on what Max said, which, I found very interesting, but the way we initially and how we connect to people is with identifying with their demands, their needs, housing, insecurity at work, poverty, poverty to the extent of hunger, neglected regions, and all the cost of living. People cannot afford basic supplies. The food banks and the horror of that and the way it has been accepted. We have to stand with all these, the daily needs of the work of ordinary people. That's where we come in, and that we stand alongside them. We support them in dispute. We are there. We identify with every need, every demand, what is necessary for a life of dignity and fulfillment. But beneath that, if this works, we are building a party for a century. And you can't base that on the demands of the day. Beneath that, there has to be a constitution, there has to be a process that is clearly democratic, there has to be a set of principles, which is where we stand, and principles that will last. Principles you can put on the back of your membership card, if they have such a thing, or one at a time. Principles of, for example, defining a socialist economy, and maybe in terms of everyone who works has the full fruit of their labour on the basis of common ownership and democratic control. A welfare state where to provide security for all its citizens from the cradle to the grave, from all who can contribute, who can, according to their ability, to all according to their need. Basic things like this: international law and universality of human rights, reformed United Nations with no vetoes, with a peacekeeping force that really will keep the peace and can intervene when a genocide is happening, as it is today, and so on and so on. Environmental protection, and so on, against racism, all racism, and discrimination, including movements and ideologies that promote racist supremacy. I mean, one goes through a whole set of ideas, but the ideas that will sustain, the principles that will sustain us for the whole of the coming generations. So I think that's a huge task. And one other thing, I'm talking too much, but one other thing, really important, we have to expose once and for all the contradiction of the heart of the Labour Party. And we've seen it at Liverpool this week, today. Rachel Reeves speaking about the economy. And it's a contradiction she cannot hide. On the one hand, she wants to support the working class because that's what Labour's supposed to do. The clue's in the name. But on the other hand, she has to support the system that creates profitable capitalist organizations. How do they make their profit? By exploiting the working class. So Labour is there promoting a system that is based on the exploitation of the class they were set up to represent.
Yes.
And it's a contradiction they can never resolve, because it began when, right at the outset, when the biggest example was the General Strike of 1926, when they refused to back the miners and the rest of the trade union movement. Ramsay MacDonald went to bed, Prime Minister, and again echoed again with the wretched Kinnock and Hattersley refusing to support the miners of '84, and now again Blair and Brown and now the Starmer's group are saying growth. Growth means oppression of the working class.
Absolutely, Ken, a clear socialist party. Sorry to interrupt. We have to wrap up quickly. Last point to you, Max. Do you think we have to rip it up and start again, or can we turn this ship around and cohere maybe the democratic forces to fight back?
I think we're in a bit of a sticky wicket, to be perfectly honest. This conference is going to go ahead regardless of what we think. They've already spent what is most likely hundreds of thousands of pounds on booking the same Liverpool venue that the Labour Party conference is currently taking place in. So that's a couple of £100,000 of members' money that has already been spent. We currently don't know how many people have joined the party. Somebody said to me earlier today that maybe only something like 11,000 people had joined, in which case, everyone who is a member is going to be sortitioned. So it could end up being democratic by accident. But yeah, no, some of these people at the top, they're so pig-headed and so determined to secure their own kind of personal prestige and cement themselves as the ruling class in the new party, that what you think, what I think, what hundreds of thousands of other people think is kind of irrelevant, because they've got the keys of power, and they're going to be the ones that open up the door. I think if what they're planning on building at this conference, a wholly electoralist party and everything, it won't, like Ken said, it won't last 100 years. It'll probably last 100 months at the most. And it'll probably peter out after the next election.
So perhaps we should consider taking the keys of power out of their hands if we can. Let's try that. Thank you very much for joining us, comrades, and I'm sure we'll see you at one of these regional meetings or the Launch Conference or a fringe meeting, etc., etc. We're not going to give up. Thank you.
No, I think the big thing is don't despair. I mean, the fight still carries on.
Absolutely. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you.